All right. Hey, Tanveer. How you doing?
Hey, I am good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for making the time. And I think we can jump right into it. And just for context, today we're going to go over some OpenClaw use cases. And how this call came to be was that I saw you at an event presenting of how you use OpenClaw directly. You had some
hmm
interesting use cases. You were the first one to actually show me that, all right, this is how you can actually do it hands on. And so I
hmm
reached out to see if we can share it online as well.
Yeah, amazing. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm all ears.
Okay. Let's kind of go from that. Let's kind of go from what does this look like for me on a day-to-day basis, and I'll show you how I interact with it as a starting point. So, um, I use the entirety of my OpenClaw on Telegram, right? And so I have Telegram as an app sitting in my phone, and that's kind of where I spend pretty much all of my AI, right? And I wanted it in such a way that it was dedicated to just AI work and not have my personal messages and other things mixed. So Telegram is where I use it purely for AI and talking to AI agents, which is pretty cool. Um, on the left-hand side, these are some of the agents that I work with on a regular basis. I have gone through so many now, and at some point, I've just done a whole cleanup. And these are the ones that I constantly talk to. And one of the big takeaways for me was to not kind of go and try to conquer the entire world. Start small, and then the things that you have and that's working, kind of go deeper, and I've realized that that gives you a lot more flexibility, and you get to really start working with an agent, and I think that's pretty cool. I'll give a quick demo of one of the things, which I think is very interesting. Um, so one of my agents is called Pulse Research, and a good way to understand Pulse Research is it started with the idea that about a month ago, can a business or a website run on its own? And this is one of those examples of, hey, I have this conceptual idea. I don't want to be sitting and running this every day. I don't want to be reviewing things that it creates, but I want to kind of just let it run and see what happens, right? So I'll tell you how this is structured, but basically it's a website called pulseresearch.ai, and it's basically an autonomous AI research company, right? And its goal is literally to publish articles daily from about 50 different sources around the world. I mean, we all love to get a good research digest about what's happening around the world, and this is my way of trying to meet my own need, but knowing that it could be used for others as well. Completely free. You sign up and you start to get these reports, but the reports are also available just for anybody to browse. Right? So in the back of my head, I've done programmatic SEO and other things in the past, and I was like, okay, what would a world look like if AI was actually creating a lot of these, not just research articles, but also the blogs that sit underneath it. And that's all like the dream. But for now, this is a product that's been running for about a month and a half, and constantly each and every single day. So this is all of the research that it did from yesterday. So there's about 5 research articles. And the way this works is every day morning wakes up and it searches on um, a bunch of blogs that I really like. So things like A16Z and a bunch of other VC blogs because they kind of talk about the future. I then do search on things like social media. So TikTok, X, and Reddit are like my constant sources. And it's just, on a particular topic around model funding, kind of company deep dives and policy in AI. I just try and find the top 50 either posts or videos or tweets or, the best new subreddits, which has the biggest amount of accounts. And all of this gets put into a pipeline, and it's doing its own, it's doing the ingestion, it's doing its own kind of rewriting and categorizing and figuring out if there's enough consistency for writing a topic. And then it writes the topic, it reviews the topic, And in some cases, it also does some graphs, some pretty graphs and things like that, all without me touching it. Right? And I thought, it's not something that I'm gonna read every day, but it sends me a alert every single day with, hey, these are the top articles that I published this week or today. And sometimes some of them are very interesting. And it's, for me personally, it's just understanding that, okay, foundation models can be now applied in 3D, an embodied model. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? It just helps me kind of learn that a little bit more. So it's really, the internet is vast. There's so much content being generated. This is just a way for me to kind of summarize all of this data for my own personal need, but I'm sure others will find it useful as well.
Yeah. Can I ask a few
Hmm.
questions?
Yeah.
So, one is, how difficult was this to make? And is it like an orchestration of many agents working together? And then the
So,
other one
mhm.
is like, how is it different from like me just going to ChatGPT or Claude and setting up a daily task to do
Yeah.
something?
I mean, I would say they're all pretty much in the same kind of hemisphere of what you can do. Um, but I think the one big difference in here is it's also able to do things like Twitter scraping, extracting data from Twitter, TikTok, where blogs are great, it's structured, but there's a lot of unstructured data, and I find that and the views that people have there are very unique, and so I'm able to combine a mix of both. I'm sure you can, with some clever engineering, you can do that on ChatGPT or Claude tasks and things like that. But I've just spun it up as a website. I'm like, if I find it useful, I'm sure others find it useful as well. So um, on the easy part, right, on the how difficult was this to set up, it's one OpenClaw. It's got access to a GitHub and it's got access to a server where everything is deployed, and it's doing everything within that. And what I've asked it to do is every single day, so this is from April 21st, every single day do three tasks. So task number one is do something for sales. I haven't defined what to do. Whatever you want to do, you do it. So in this case, on the 21st, it created a newsletter outreach with three cold pitches for these people. I was like, okay, great. But in this case, I need to send it manually. I haven't given it or asked it to do any of that right now, and here's a file and I can access it. Do one incremental change on the product. So it found that there's a problem with policy and regulation. It has two reports in 4 weeks. It's now making its own recommendation to do this, and it's just waiting for me to just sign off. Same thing with marketing. It's created a 4-tweet thread based on yesterday's two reports, and it's ready to post. It has access to its own Twitter account, so it's just randomly posting things on there right now. And hopefully over time it'll crack with some really nice digests, and we'll make it big, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And so this like sales part, product part, and marketing part, can I imagine it as like three different agents, or is it still that one agent doing everything?
It's still the one OpenClaw agent doing all of that.
Hmm.
And it helps me with three things, right? One is it's one single conversation. So technically, if a product update happens, ideally, that's a good thing for marketing to pick up as well. So in this case, I want all of that to be in like the same flow, and that's just my personal choice. Perhaps when this gets to a point where it's writing 100 reports a day, I might split that into three different versions of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy good.
Um, yeah, and it's one of the days it figured out that I was using Featherless as one of the backend APIs for actually writing things, and it figured out that there was an outage, and it did a fix to it asked me in a separate message to kind of move everything over to OpenRouter, and I was like, yes, go ahead, do it, and then it's now running on OpenRouter instead of Featherless. So and it's been running like this for several weeks now. As you can see on the right hand side is my message. I haven't really talked to it a lot. I talk to it very little. But every day at the end of every week, it also sends me how many reports it did and a little bit of like analytics behind it. And, I'm just letting it run. And the goal is to see what happens with it.
Yeah. The one thing I want to point out that it's like your explanation, and I hope I don't butcher it, was like the difference between OpenClaw and like working in ChatGPT, Claude, or Cursor is that over there I'm the one giving all the instructions, and here you kind of give it the goal and it goes and figures it out, right?
Correct. Yeah. And the other day I was like, okay, create an about us page, just so that, just to understand what it understands about me. And it created this page, and I was like, okay, it's got ingest, analyze, write, publish. It got pretty much everything, and then it wrote a team, Pulse AI, that's what it's calling itself, and then the human, you know, approved strategy. That's the only thing that I do. Um, but
Yeah.
it's a cool concept, right? And it's able to run it. It also has access to an email inbox. It can't respond to emails, but it can at least read emails. So we'll see what happens with that as well.
Yeah. So
Um,
translate it into like people terms, that's my favorite thing to do, like to help me understand it, is like basically you have someone doing this, or you have a team of people doing this, and you're just like the owner and just directing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if we were 2 years, even 2 years ago, if I had to do something like this, website in itself is one part of it. And then on top of all of that, finding a consistent way to scrape all of this data and like put it into a pipeline and let it run automatically every single day and improve it 1% every single day would be, I can probably do it, but I'm now completely hands off, right? And I think there's a concept called zero human companies, and I think I'm slowly trying to experiment what a zero human company would look like with Pulse Research. That's the intent.
Yeah. Super cool. Super cool.
Amazing. Um, I was let me just kind of switch over to another demo, something that I do in my personal life. I was at another um, demo night recently, and there were four of us presenters, and one of the things that I that was a common factor amongst all of us was that we were all doing something with our health data, right? And if you think about it, I think the world is slowly moving towards trying to be proactive about their health rather than just being preventative and like when something happens, you go and do this, right? And there's tons of companies that's working in the space. So the way that I had started to do this, and you saw this demo, is I created another agent called Open Health, and I was just sending it my health data from my from my iPhone and my Apple Watch, right? It was fairly simple, and once it got to a point of having enough data, I was like, I can do more with this, right? So, for example, this is a summary, and it tells me how many steps I did, what was my average heart rate, and it's doing this each and every single day. Things like tracking sleep and water and supplements were just oh, this would be cool, and I did it once, and I'm never doing it again, but it's still part of its core thing, and it's just there. Um, and it's also looking at like patterns and like streaks and things like that. It's just running on its own, right? And so it's my own personal agent that has access to my health data. At one point, I realized that how do I make sense of this data and how do I create almost a digital twin of who I am? And I thought that would be a very interesting thing for me to have. So I went to Open Health and I was like, hey, based on everything that you know about me, can you create a digital twin of me? Heart rate, things like that. Obviously, first versions were horrible, and it didn't do what I wanted to do. But in my head, I had like, Minority Report kind of concept of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I could like see me in like different shapes? Anyway, it went through a few iterations, and I gave it loads of like direction, and eventually it ended up building this for me. This is on my local host because I don't want to show the correct URL, but because it's my own personal health data. I'm a a big fan of Halo, so this is its closest representation to a Halo. But it's a cool way to, again, visualize my own, kind of data. And it's getting updated pretty much every single day as my phone sends it data. It's able to do all of that. And then I realized, well, we're all growing up, and as you know, Samuel, we all have injuries, and we're growing older. And I was like, okay, can I take notes about my own body, and can I get AI to understand that? So then I started to do that. So these little bubbles are basically tiny little like notes about my body and like things wrong with my body, so to speak. And it would show up under body notes as an example. And so if I do it there, it will tell, I have palmar fasciitis. So now my AI knows that I have this thing, right? And it's a good way, even if I'm out and about and I think of something, I can just send it to my agent, right? And it just understands it, keeps it there. Then I realized that, well, I have been, every year I do like a health assessment. And I was like, I can probably send all of the reports that I've got from the past several years to the AI. So I sent all of that. And then now I have all of my lab slice data with the expected range and where I am right now and all of that again, another simple view, right? Now I don't have to look at, I'm gonna go through my emails and figure out what it was. And, the next time I go to a doctor, I have this view which shows how I'm progressing over time versus looking at a single piece of paper. And I thought that was a very interesting way to understand your own health. And that was my initial iteration. And I thought this was pretty cool. And obviously, I can access all of this data via my OpenClaw as well. So I can ask it, hey, go add a body note about something, or I can say, hey, here's my latest sets of like lab results, and upload it, and it'll create a new version of it. But then I was like, oh, can I take it further? So then I started to do a few additional things. So I started to do things like, how healthy am I? And so it's like a GitHub style view of, how many steps am I taking in the last 30 days? Things like that, fairly simple things to do once you start having some amount of data. But then I also started creating this nutrient atlas. So we all have allergies. We all, like certain things. Certain things work differently for us. So this is a good indication of different, things that you need as human beings. And there's a little bit of information about what they are, and they're all connected to like NHS or PubMed data of like what it is. But the beautiful thing behind this is I can then, so some things like vitamin D, I can now link it back to my data, my blood test results. So I know this is my kind of vitamin D change over time, and it writes it all down. And so I'm able to constantly understand how my nutrients, or if I'm taking more nutrients, and I'm like, there's so much we can do behind all of this. So that's the other part of like, how do you take your own data and build something for yourself that is unique to you. Nobody else needs to see it, but it just helps you understand more about all of the things. My goal with this, Samuel, is next time I have an issue, I could go and ask ChatGPT, but ChatGPT doesn't know how I've been living for the last 2 months, how many steps that I take, or does that have an impact on something? It has no idea, and this will have better idea. The same thing with things like, a beautiful thing for me is I can just ask it and say, hey, I took magnesium today. That's another trend of like, oh, it'll help you sleep. And I can just log an entry in here that's saying, okay, I took magnesium yesterday and I didn't actually find any issues. Like I slept normally. It wasn't like I had better sleep. And that becomes part of my record. And so it understands that I've taken magnesium and it didn't find. And I'm like, okay, there's so much more we can do here.
Yeah.
That's another way how I'm using it personally for my own life.
Wow. So just to kind of summarize it, you connected your personal data tracking to OpenClaw. It's able to scan it like, is it on a daily basis or?
Yeah. So I have a server. So my OpenClaw has access to a public server. And every day my iPhone, using shortcuts, which is one of the things that everybody's iPhone has, it just sends the last 24 hours worth of data to my own server, right? Apple doesn't give you information in a very easy manner. You have to take a few steps there, but it's just that's how I'm storing all of this data today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on day one, you're gonna get very little data. That's okay. But I've been running this for 2, 3 months now, and there's plenty of data for me to go figure out and start to add all of these little enhancements to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like a combination of all this daily tracking and then putting layers of like those injuries that you mentioned or reports
Yeah,
and these events and everything.
yeah.
Yeah. And now we have like a
Um,
more full picture of.
exactly. I mean, next time, I mean, I think the way that I see it is I see a world where, you know, in the future, when we have a doctor's appointment, my doctor has access to all of this data. That's my own data, and he's able to kind of have these conversations in a much more efficient manner. There's a concept in the NHS called patient-reported outcomes, Samuel, and it's something where a patient would say, "Oh, I'm feeling great. I'm not feeling great because I did that." Yes, but all of that data can actually help formulate and understand how you have been feeling, how your body has been reacting to certain things, etc. And I think this is my own version of, you know, Tanveer's patient-reported outcome of my own life.
Mm.
Um, yeah, the future is bright for medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. Clearly. Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
I have like looking at this. Uh, like this is your own personal data, like super personal, then you're building basically a company or something that could be a company and people might be doing these things.
Yeah.
Like, how are things on the security side of all of
Mm.
this? How are you looking at it and what are you doing?
Great question. So there's two parts to this. So the first part is OpenClaw in itself. Um, um, you know, OpenClaw is sitting on a VPS on the cloud, and only my Telegram account has access to OpenClaw. Um, and through my VPS, that's the only way to access it. It's protected by a tail-scale server, which means that again, nobody else can access that box, right? Unless the tail-scale server is being activated on my end. I rarely go into the control panel on OpenClaw. You know, maybe from time to time, if I need to make maybe some approvals, I might go in. But for most cases, I try and do everything just through Telegram, right? And then I have my own private server where all of this gets deployed. Everything that you see in the backend is all getting deployed in my own private server. It's got authentication behind it. Um, but again, um, am I building like things with SOC 2 and all of that? Absolutely not. Right? Yeah, building something for myself, and the risk is on me, right? And I think with these brand new tools and brand new models coming out that are like amazing at things like cybersecurity or even doing defensive and offensive attacks and things like that. I think the world is getting to a very dark place just in terms of like model security or like app security. So yeah, mine's two layered. One is Tailscale VPN to protect all of my OpenClaw instances, and then everything else is just private, no public access as much as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Definitely.
Um, maybe I'll just walk you through maybe one or two more things in here, or
Yeah, yeah, please do.
um, other apps that I have running. So one of my other apps that my wife and I control is this thing called Flood and Steel. It's an e-commerce website, and she does most of the work, but I sometimes go in from time to time. And again, and the entire website is just managed using AI, and it's been running for about 2 months now. But it isn't autonomous, so to speak. It's we control it, so to speak. We make all the decisions, and AI is just a helper there. right? So it's almost like a teammate. It's not a CEO that's executing things on our behalf.
Mm.
Um, Jarvis is my primary agent, so this is where I give it most of the things and issues that I have are usually given to my Jarvis agent. Anytime I have a new idea, I use my Jarvis to kind of brainstorm, understand, what to do, etc. And that's where most of my things happen. So just so that you're aware, I'm currently working on this idea called book in mail, and as you would imagine, um, it's literally uh, sending you books in your mail.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this purely because I saw an Instagram post of somebody saying, "Oh, here are the top 100 business books that you should read." And I was like, literally took a screenshot and sent it to OpenClaw and be like, "Hey, what could this look like as a business?" And so that's me trying to run that. Yeah, and then there's a bunch of things that I'm working on alongside. So, for example, it's now asking me what's on my list, priority list, book and mail first. So if I just say yes. Usually the yes AI tools can show up as like little images or little buttons that you can click instead of me having to type it, but for whatever reason it decided not to do that right now. Um,
Yeah. When you say your primary agent, what's the difference between this one and the other ones?
just this is my first agent, so it has everything about me. It's probably the one that I've had the longest. That's the only reason why I call it the primary agent. This isn't a master, and the pipeline is a sub agent. No, pipeline. The Pulse Research is a separate agent on its own. Jarvis is just my own agent that works.
Yeah. It's your personal Jarvis.
And then I have something called OpenTrader. That's where I've given AI the ability to trade using my Trading 212 account. Um, it hasn't worked. Yeah,
Yeah.
it hasn't worked over the last month because there's a rule that it has to be a net positive market,
Mhm.
and net positive, the market's basically been going down. So it hasn't really worked at all. And yeah, there's some errors and I need to go figure out what's happening. Um, then these are some other experiments that I have. I have another agent for my home.
Mhm.
So I've got a few Raspberry Pis, I've got a few kind of climate control sensors sitting around the house, so and I can kind of play around with it. I also have a few IKEA um, smart devices as well, so I can control those through my OpenClaw. But this only works when I'm home because
Mhm.
it's running on a local server, on a local model, and yeah, that's how that's set up.
What are the type of things you control at your home?
So there's a few things, and I'll probably just walk through this. So there's a little controller device that you can buy, and it's almost like a little CPU for your home.
Mm-hmm.
It's connected to my LAN network, and it runs its own like Wi-Fi. And then you've got IKEA's home smart tools. So there's a bunch of lights. There's a Samsung, not Samsung. There's a Philips Hue bulb somewhere in our house. So all of that's now connected. Um, and again, people will ask, "Oh, but you have something like a Google Home or a Alexa. Can these not do the same thing?" Yes, they can. But I think I love that it's an actual LLM, and it's an LLM that's learning and improving over time. Versus Alexa is like, oh, you have to teach it a little skill, and that's the only way it can access these things, and you have to like click buttons. Versus with this, it's just hey, do this, and it just does it,
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. And how do you compare like interacting with it on Telegram versus having an app where you could control it?
Um, I'd say Telegram's just. I think everybody will have their own personal choice of what they like with these kinds of agents. Um, as you're aware, Telegram has this thing. um, oh, well, OpenClaw in this case has this thing where it's still verbose, or most LLMs are verbose in how they respond. So imagine texting it, you're going to get very long messages with like random things in it. It's not the right ideal experience. On the other end, email is also not the right experience. You kind of need something in between. WhatsApp's great, but set up slightly harder, versus something like Telegram was so easy to set up,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and it's free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. I got two last questions before we go.
Yep.
One is, like, did you hit any limitations with this?
Mhm.
And then the last one would be, what do you think is the future of this? Where is this all going?
Limitations, absolutely. I mean, earlier I said there's so many agents that I've built. I've just now come back down to like these few. And I think sometimes it's painful trying to teach these models to do new things, and you have to do it each and every single time. And sometimes it gets a bit like, I wish it just knew how to do that. So the teaching part is always going to be the one that is the hardest, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So if I gave you a use case to build your own personal health agent, and I gave that same thing to me, the way you build it is different to how I'm going to build it, and then how you speak to your agent is going to be different, which means it could be a 1 day's piece of work, or it could be, over a week's piece of work. And all of those are little nuances that OpenClaw has. And remember how I said, think of OpenClaw as almost like setting up your brand new computer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that. The experience is different for everyone, right? And there's no consistency in between that, which is a blessing because you're building super personal agents, but also sometimes it just doesn't work. But you got to keep trying, because that's the world that we're moving to, and you kind of have to do that. What's next? I think that world is just exploding. And now you don't need to technically set up something like OpenClaw on your own personal server. There's like so many SaaS companies that's now doing this. And so the technical knowledge that you needed to set up something like OpenClaw is just like gone. And there's so many other companies who are offering this out there for free now, or obviously for a small price, but you don't need to set any of these things up. Security comes built in with a lot of these things. But I think the open source world is still where a lot of the experimentation is happening. And I think that's a very healthy place for early experimentation, and just trying out new things, so to speak.
Yeah. And then, like, one thing, when you talked about the teaching it, like the LLMs,
Mm-hmm.
like, first thing that came to mind is like, oh, like, there's going to be probably, how people create apps and they said like, all right, this is the UI for this use case. There might be
Yeah,
like the agent for this use case, and people start
yeah.
using these agents. And do you think like this is the future as well, that they're like people are going to be making these agents that you can then use?
I do think, so there's a company that I've been following, another agent harness similar to OpenClaw called Paperclip, and kind of very similar in what they're trying to achieve, but Paperclip's going down the route of almost like zero human companies as like its core concept. And so they've just released, or they're planning to release, this thing called pre-built companies. So a lot of these roles with what they're supposed to do is already pre-built. Right? So you can hit one button, which is a template, and it loads all of these things, SEO and marketing and all of these, and they're all ready to go. I think that's great, and I think we need more of that. But I think as you try to make it personal, that's where the friction still is. I think we all, in our brains, we all think Jarvis, and that's like our sweet spot of like, hey Jarvis, do this, hey Jarvis, do that. But I think we're still a bit far from that.
Yeah, yeah. One last question, I promise, it popped to mind.
Yeah.
When I look at you and I'm like wow, like what what this guy's doing is crazy. I want to do it as well. Do you have the same with someone else? Like someone like you're looking at like, wow.
There's a friend of mine. His name is Michael, and he runs. He's probably a build-in public founder who's building basically the AI native interface for security in Africa, and he's doing some crazy things. And I'm kind of following him, and it's insane what he's doing.
You can't. Or you.
It's insane what he's doing,
Mhm.
and so he's somebody that I look up to.
Yeah. Do you have any examples that you can share very quickly? Like,
I think he bought like his own personal training unit in his home where he's training models, which is just insane. Um, and he wrote a post once, and that kind of resonated with me quite a lot, which is that the difference between who you are, who you and I are today, and building your own personal kind of models is just a graphics card and a little agent harness on top of that. But 99% of us will never do that. 99.999% of us will never do that. But, you know, it's knowing that he's taken that leap and he's now doing all of these little things with those fine-tuned models is pretty epic.
yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Cool, Tanveer. Thank you so much for making the time and
no
sharing all this.
problem.
I think people
No
will be
problem.
excited to see it.
Yeah.
I wonder where this is all gonna go with you, like for the next couple of weeks and months. Like if we speak next time, it's gonna be, another set of agents or going somewhere.
100%.
So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me, Samuel.